Hi, welcome back to Sex Lives Unfiltered. I'm your host, Laura Muratori. And today I have a friend, colleague here, Haley Krenzke. Haley's a fellow American, so it's awesome to have Haley on the show. Haley works in sexology. And actually, Haley, why don't you tell us a little bit about your fabulous self? Because you have lots of qualifications and you've done a lot of things.
Yeah, that is true. I'm Haley. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm a certified sex therapist with ASECT, which is the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. I have so many acronyms that I have to remember for all of the things. So I'm a certified sex therapist. So that's back in the States. Here in Australia, I'm an accredited psychosexual therapist. I'm also a supervisor, clinical supervisor, and I've been working with clients human sexuality for almost a decade now. So not too long, but not too fresh. I'm kind of right in the middle. And I've been loving the new podcast
Thank
episodes.
you.
There's been a couple lately, sexual communication and intuition, that
Thank you.
really got me thinking about something that you and I have chatted about that we see often with the clients that we're working with, um, arousal non-concordance, that I thought, oh, what an exciting thing.
I know, awesome, and that's why it's really great to have you on. The reason why I like this topic is because it's a topic that not many people know about. So,
Mm,
like you're coming to therapy, or you've seen maybe OTs, or you've done some work, in other sort of therapies. This is a topic that a lot of people don't know about, and I think that's pretty relevant to talk about and open this conversation up to the public.
yeah. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So, Haley, do you want to start us off and kind of start explaining arousal non-concordance for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to try to make this like as layman's terms as possible. And I think that something like arousal non-concordance, which is something a lot of people experience, I think it's probably just best that we chat about it in a way that's, consumable. I can understand it.
100%.
How I like to start this conversation is really based off of Emily Nagoski's work. She talks about when it comes to arousal non-concordance, that we first have to understand that in the pleasure center of our brain, it's not just pleasure center. There is the experience of wanting, of liking, and of learning. So, wanting being like, ooh, look at that thing. I want that. Liking being like, ooh, this feels good to me. I like that. And learning being the most classic example of this is Pavlov and the experiment of ringing a bell, gets food, starts to associate. So, when it comes to arousal non-concordance, this is when there is a lack of predictive relationship between a physiological response and the subjective experience of pleasure and desire. And I said that I was going to make things easy, and here I am not. So basically, when your genitals are doing something, there is a physical arousal sign happening, and it does not match the subjective experience of desire. So my body is doing something and I am not in the mood, or my body is not doing a thing and I'm super in the mood.
Correct. I like that. Yeah, thank you for breaking that down a little bit. Um, how I how I explain to clients, I guess especially those who are male, and I just kind of say, hey,
Mm,
if a male doctor is holding your penis and your penis gets hard, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're attracted to your male doctor or you'd be identifying as gay. Your penis is being touched and it might react in a particular way.
yeah.
Or, and I kind of just try to break that down into things happen to the body, and especially people who identify as women, I might talk about just because you're being touched doesn't mean you're going to be lubricated.
Yeah. So that I think is then what comes down to the difference between wanting and liking and the learned experience, where your body has a reaction to some sort of sexual stimulus. Something happens, as you're saying, like penis gets touched and it
Yeah.
might fill with blood, and there is an automatic response that happens there, and a learning that happens around that sexual stimulus, which is very different than wanting and liking, which happen more so than in the realm of the subjective experience of desire. I want this. I like this thing. This feels good for me. Not my body is doing a thing because physiologically it just does a thing.
It just does it. Yeah, exactly. What I find probably more complicated that maybe we can chat about is when we're into something, like our brains are on and I really want to do this, but my body's not turning on.
Hmm.
And that, that might look like, guys who are in a sexual situation and their penis isn't responding, or a female presenting who's saying, "I want to have sex with my partner. I'm into this. I'm just not getting turned on, or I might not be orgasming."
And I think that so many people come to work with me and they're like, "Oh, I'm so fucked up. This thing's happening to me. Oh, I'm so broken." And I feel like actually this is really common, and what the research tells us is that that overlap between what's happening with the genitals and then the subjective experience of desire for and in the research they're really breaking it down into a pretty binary, like men and women kind of thing.
Correct. Correct.
Men tend to have like a 50 to 60% overlap, whereas women tend to have about somewhere between like 10 and 30% overlap. So there's quite a range, like between 10 and 60% of overlap. And I think with men, what I tend to see is because there's more of that overlap, when the experience of what my body is doing and what my brain is doing is not in alignment, we make a lot of stories around that. And
Correct.
with women, when there's not overlap, we also make a lot of stories about that because we're basing it on this experience of, what's typical for a
It's
lot of men.
it's supposed to happen. Supposed.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
This should be happening.
It should be happening. And I think that part of the issue and what it sounds from what you were saying is I think oftentimes when it comes to gauging consent and
Mm.
desire and like are you into this is that people are often looking towards their partner's genitals to give them the response or the answer around consent or are you into referencing back to the podcast episode that you did around sexual communication is that if our genitals are not telling us the information or they're not telling the whole story or they're not giving the cues that are congruent with the subjective desire experience. Like, how do I know that my partner is into me? How do I know that my partner wants to have sex with me? They tell you. They
Correct.
tell you, right? And so, like, if my partner is not wet and they're saying to me, I'm so into this, I want you so bad. Well, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to hear that. And maybe we use lube. Maybe the body turns on once we start playing around a little bit. Similarly, I hear so often with
Mm.
the partners of men who, you know, man doesn't get an erection, but they're like, I want you. I'm so into this. Like, I just want to eat you
Yeah.
out for a bit, like, but the experience of partner is like, oh, he's not into me. He doesn't like me that much. Once again, we're looking to the genitals to give us information when a person's mouth is telling us, hey, I want this. I'm into this.
100%. I like that. And that's the part where people struggle with is to have that voice and going, "I'm into this, I'm not into this,
Mm,
more of this, less of this, let's do this." And I mean, we're basing things and good point circling back is we're just basing things off purely off genitals. And if there's a mind-body disconnect and things are happening that's not supposed to, it just, as I tell my clients, we're just throwing pleasure out the window. Like we
mm,
are completely then disregarding an experience that could be amazing. Two people are into it or wanting to do it. It doesn't work out the way that it was supposed to. And then you're going to throw it all away.
mm,
Feel
mhm.
bad. Like,
Yeah,
oof.
yeah. Well, and I think you mentioned orgasms as well, and
Mm.
orgasms being what I call happy accidents, where, it's like if it happens, that's great. And if it doesn't, can we still look at the experience we just had and say, like, that was fun. I was into it. What was happening felt good for my body. We had this shared mutual pleasure. We felt really connected, but nobody came. Like, I feel that so many people, once again, are looking to that orgasm as a measure of something when orgasm is also an involuntary spontaneous physiological response that happens as the result of, bodies doing body things. And I sit with clients and I say it's similar to a sneeze, right? Where a sneeze happens, it's a physiological, spontaneous body response. But we put so much weight on orgasm and not so much weight on a sneeze,
Yeah.
where if someone sneezes, like, okay, they sneeze, but we put so much weight on orgasm. And so I think that once again, it puts a lot of pressure on there to be measurements of success around sex that are purely body based, like what your body does, like what are the automatic, spontaneous, physical reactions and responses to things, as opposed to the communication. Partner is saying that was really good for me. Oh, but you didn't come, so you must be lying to me. It must not have been very good for you.
Correct.
They just said no, that was great for me. So in one ear, out the other.
That's a good point. Why are we not listening to our partners? And on the contrary, though, I am going to say I do find people I'm gonna kind of challenge this a little bit. Or do you find people who, like, will tell their partners, "Oh, that was great," when they didn't like it, or, "Yes, I'm into
Mm,
this, I'm not," right? Because there's such this fear of disappointment, and then this kind of just
yeah.
confirms what you just said, is the heaviness and the weight. This is what my ethos is can we just take away the weight of it? Like, I have to perform, I have to do, I have to feel so you get confirmation and then you have to do that for me. Like that is just not hot and
Mm,
sexy and just like,
yeah.
oh, I don't want to go have sex because I have to then pretend to be good for somebody so their feelings don't get hurt. Like, can't we
Mhm.
all just be grown-ups? Can we be adults and grown-ups and take accountability and then taking that accountability to communicate and that it's also okay. It's okay. It's okay. If
Mm,
it's amazing. It's okay if we didn't come. It's okay if a genital didn't do what the genital is supposed to do.
yeah.
I don't know. That's my rant for the day, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think as you're saying, like, can't we all be grown-ups? And I think about, can we also like, where can we bring in a sense of, like, joy and whimsy that oftentimes we leave behind in childhood as well, where, like, we're trying things for the first time and we're, like, not embarrassed. We're like, "No shame. Here it is. Here is all of me, right here doing the thing, and just because I like it." And, we lose so much of that. And to me, it's like bringing
funny.
in that,
Say, Haley.
that, that like sense of awkwardness, of like no shame, no embarrassment, and the adult, like, let me communicate about things. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. Let me tell you what I'm into. We lose so much of that. And I think, as well as you're talking about some of those expectations of doing things that maybe a person's not super into, or they're like, yeah, but my partner likes it, so I guess I'll do it, is that expectation piece, I think, reinforces then that feeling of brokenness when it comes to arousal non-concordance, because once again, I think people are using genitals as the measurement of enjoyment, and someone is like, oh yeah, I'm just kind of like doing this thing because my partner's into it, and I'm not getting as wet or as hard as I would like, and now we're fighting about it, and we're going
Yeah.
to bed angry, and all of these things, that there are so many pieces and steps to that we missed moments to
Good point.
communicate, to talk about things, to express a want, to ask for something, to make a request.
That's a really good point. And I guess when I talk to and that's interesting that you say that because I kind of get my clients when they're, like, when they're playing, right? They're having fun.
Mm,
Think about it almost like steps or like a video game, like Pac-Man, like going up the it's like you're not gonna go to the next step until you're both like, "Ooh, this is good." Like, where we're sitting and what we're doing is, like, really hot and great. Or, "This is okay, let's keep going." But and then you move to the next spot. And it's kind of this dance or fluidity of just I call it chasing pleasure, which
mhm,
is Which it sounds maybe not so good saying chasing pleasure, but I think if that's the whole point, like if you're looking at a map, you're just looking for X marks a spot and that's pleasure.
And also, on that map, there being multiple X's, that it's not
Correct.
a singular, like there is
Correct.
one
Correct.
particular pleasurable thing, but they're hidden everywhere on this map
Yeah.
and we don't know and we have to find them.
Yeah. And that goes back to being playful and fun.
I think with that too, that playfulness makes me think a little bit around pleasure, desire, that subjective experience and the ways that play turns a lot of people's ons on, like gets them in the mood. It creates a bridge of sorts to a space of a more like lusty, erotic space. Is that
Yeah.
oftentimes play is an access point for that.
A hundred
And,
percent.
you know, I think once again, I'm just thinking about, the topic of arousal non-concordance and when we put expectations on certain things. So I think sometimes people will hear the things that I say and they go, "Oh, okay, so if I play with my partner in XYZ way, then I can get this thing that I want." And that's not always the case because once again, we could be playing, having a good time. Partner might be like, "Oh, I'm super into this." We go to start touching and genitals aren't doing what we want them to do. And then it's like, oh, but we did all of the things. We played. I did this thing for you. I did this with you. And it was all for nothing. And once again, there becomes this disconnect between the subjective experience of what we're doing, how we're doing it, this dance that we're engaging in together. And then the minute a genital is not doing what we want it to do, it's like, oh, we throw it all out the window like, "Oh,
Yeah.
womp womp." Like, there wasn't it's not as good then.
Exactly. I guess those expectations. It made me think about, I don't know about you, but one of the most common things that I see are usually and it doesn't matter who's really in my office talking, but I find that if hetero couple, if the man doesn't get hard while he's performing oral to the female, both people get so upset. Like,
Mm,
female receiving will be like, oh my God, you should be hard. And like why and this is like kind of what you're talking about, the expectations is this is what I find wild is we have this expectation that like especially you have to be hard or wet or your genital has to be on quick. Like
mm,
you're doing the thing, so now you should be hard and let's get the show on the road. And if that's not, then you're not into me. I'm not attractive. And then on the contrary, I hear the person performing the oral going, I'm just concentrating. I'm just, I'm doing this. I'm
yeah,
making sure that person likes it. It doesn't get me off. And some people it gets off. Like, that's, we all have our things, but, or in different moments and different times. But I think that's one of the biggest things that I see is that yeah, that biggest expectation and disappointment when that doesn't happen.
mm. Yeah, yeah, I see it often, and once again, I think it's that space where, um, there's an expectation about how penises should work, and I find that oftentimes I have to have a very, like, real conversation with people where I challenge that expectation a little bit around if we want a sexual experience with a penis that is always rock hard the moment we want it to be and stays that way for a long period of time is that we're actually talking about a sex toy. We're not talking about a person. And when you are engaging with another person is that they have a body and that's part of what makes sexual experiences wonderful is that there is another person with a body engaging with your body. But if we set these expectations that bodies should be acting like a sex toy or doing particular things, um, then I think that we lose track of all of the other stuff that makes people want to have sex, which is things like connection and shared mutual pleasure, feeling wanted by your partner. So if there's no longer a person with you there, like you lose out on all the good stuff.
Oh, that's gold right there. You do lose out on you do lose out on all the good stuff. That
Mm.
I think is a great takeaway for people to think about, after listening. Don't miss out on the good stuff.
Don't miss out on the good
On the good
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah, I think with that too, okay, there's this human body in front of you, and as we said, the things that a lot of people are using as a measurement of is this person into it is like what their genitals are doing or not doing, and the subjective desire experience, like the stuff that makes this person a person. um I oftentimes find that when I have conversations with people around arousal non-concordance is that they can, for the most part, like understand my brain is doing one thing, my body's doing another. And sometimes those things don't make sense. Oh, like a morning erection doesn't necessarily mean that I'm super horny and want sex right now. Like sometimes that's just the body does the thing. I find where it gets a little bit more complicated is when people are like, yeah, but my body is kind of into it and I want it, but I don't at the same time. Like, I don't know what's going on. And there's
Yeah.
a non-concordance or an incongruence within the subjective desire experience. And so I tend to have conversations then with clients where I break that down a little bit more because I think that just saying like, oh, your brain is saying one thing, your body is saying another. I think that the subjective desire experience, I tend to break it down into your head, that cognitive space, like your brain saying stuff, which, can be like certain should messages or like, oh, these things that I, you know, historically have liked, these logic spaces. So that being kind of like one part of that, the heart being another part of that, this place of emotion that vulnerability, connection, um, attunement, understanding. Um, the guts, which I, interpret as being intuition, which you had talked about in a previous episode. And it's part of what I was like, oh, yeah, this thing. So the guts being a part of that, which for a lot of
Yeah.
people is like that internal threat system, like where someone gets the ick from someone or like someone's given me the creeps or whatever stuff kind of exists in that gut intuition space, and then the genitals as being a part of that. And I tend to walk through clients around some of that and they'll say like, oh, like my head is in it and I'm like, oh, I should have sex with my partner right now, and my heart is in it like, oh, I want that connection so bad. I'm like really in love with this person, but something in my guts, like I just not feeling it. And I think that that is oftentimes really confusing for people because they're like, but my head's in it and my genitals are in it, but why am I not into this? And I think that the gut tends to be the thing that a lot of people are like, I don't understand why I'm not into this. And with that like internal threat system is sometimes that's like um old sexual stories, traumas, things like that that maybe make that internal threat system hypervigilant, scanning for
Right.
threats,
Yeah.
for danger. Yeah, and so I think it's really confusing for people when they're like, I love this person. I feel good. I want to do this, but not at the same time. And so I tend to think about it in this space of like your brain kind of logicking and giving you the message, I'm safe. Your heart giving you this message that is like, I'm connected. Your gut's giving you the message of like, I'm trusting, I trust this person. And your genitals giving you the message of like, we're turned on and we like this. And so sometimes even doing a bit of a scan there to be like, hey, what's going on for
What's
me right now? And being able to then share that with a partner, once again being able to communicate to say like, hey, like, yeah, that sounds really fun, responding to a of initiation to say like, yeah, I would love to do that with you, my heart is so into that, but I'm just not there mentally right now, or like something in my gut's just like is telling me that I just need to like snuggle on the couch with you tonight or whatever it is. But even being able to talk about some of that, because I think oftentimes partners will hear like no, period, to a bid for sex, no, period. And then, around and around we go, like, okay, then someone's disappointed, and then,
Whatever you
we're
wanted.
like
Yeah.
trying to make everything better. But being able to have open conversations to say, like, I love you, I'm attracted to you, and also no, not tonight.
Yeah, well, that goes back to being the grown-up piece.
Mm, yeah.
I liked how you kind of broke it down into head, heart, gut, and genitals. I'm not sure about you, but I think one of the common issues of that not all being connected and in flow is when one of those pieces, and usually what I see, it's like it's the gut saying, and people then come in and they're like, I don't understand why I don't want it.
Mm,
Kind of similar to what you said. It's those old stories, or I just don't want to do this. And I'm keen to pick your brain on this, but what I find is a lot of people will have sex even when they don't want to.
yeah.
And then over time, like that kind of then S I that kind of then tells the gut or the brain that you shouldn't do this anymore. Like, you kinda your body goes, "No more. No more.
Mm,
You've done it for however many years or months." And then so that's when there's kind of that disconnect as the mind saying, "I don't want it because my body's not feeling safe. My gut knows it's not okay." And that's not necessary. And sometimes it's not always a trauma or it's not relationship issues. You could have the best, wonderful, loving partner, but it's having that sex believe because you believe you have to.
mhm.
Back to the shouldas. And then
Yeah.
so the shouldas has created that, disarray of the brain, the heart, and the gut, and the genitals, and the systems get all out of whack. I mean,
Mhm.
do you find that?
Yeah, yeah. I think that all sorts of things can
Mm,
throw things off balance. Like within relationship, there being certain dynamics where I think resentment like exists in that gut space, if there's some resentment that exists there, or if a person has been having sex kind of over and over again when they really don't want to, but they feel obligated to. I feel that there's something in that. There's like almost a body betrayal that happens there that I imagine in some ways or for some people sits in that gut space. I think that if we're only listening to the brain all of the time, it's gonna listen to a lot of the should messages that exist around us. We want to belong. We want to feel like we make sense. We want to fit in. And also, like, sometimes that's to our detriment, where we put ourselves in that position of, well, I should do this thing, so I'm gonna do it. And then later feel like it wasn't that into that, but I felt like I needed to. And there's a model that I really like that Kai Cheng Tom put out, and it's the spectrum of consent, and it
mm,
has in the most consent spaces wanting, one step down from that being willing, which tends to be where a lot of people with a more responsive desire pattern fall, where they're like, I'm willing to, fool around and see what happens. That's not non consensual. That's absolutely consensual. Um, and then from there is a space of tolerating where it's like, oh, yeah, like I'll do it. That's still consensual, but it's tolerating, right? You're just tolerating the thing. And then enduring, which is like, I have to do this thing, or I'm doing this thing because if I don't, there's some sort of consequence to it. I'm saying yes to it, but there is a consequence if I say no. So it's in this space of enduring, which is still consensual. I'm saying yes to it, but there is that component of because there's a consequence. I think that when people exist in tolerating and enduring space when it comes to sex, that tends to start making things a little out of whack there, where the gut is like, whoa, maybe we trust our partner, but do we trust ourselves? Like, can I
yeah.
trust myself in saying, oh, yeah, this is a thing that I want? Or am I simply just tolerating this? Do I trust that do I trust myself to say no? Like, does my body trust me to say no? Like, does my body trust my brain to say no? And so I think that there's so many complicated pieces in that. And so, just as you're talking about sexual communication in a previous episode, what is that sexual communication like with yourself around how you're talking about your own wants and desires? And like even outside of talking about things with your partner and saying, hey partner, I want this, but even just to yourself to be able to say, like, what does feel good for me? What do I like? What are things that I've said no to in the past that I might want to say yes to? What are things that I've said yes to in the past that I might want to say no to? What are things that exist in a maybe, I don't know, space? And having some of that sexual communication just with yourself.
I
Journal
love
it.
that.
Talk to yourself in the mirror, voice note it. I don't know, but have that conversation with yourself in addition to with your partner.
Oh, so valid. So valid. I think that's like another piece of gold from today. Change the stories that you're having. I think on that note, though, a lot of people are like, I don't know what I like. I don't know.
Mm,
Right. So back to kind of that scale that you were talking about, when I find a lot of people in the enduring or tolerance scale, over time or even not so long, they then swing to the other side of the pendulum, which is I'm just saying no. Like I am not even going to think about do anything or willing. I'm just now back to trusting myself. Is the only
mhm,
way to trust myself is to make it a hard no and to kind of take ownership of your body again. And so I guess that makes sense, but I think if people did a lot of what you said is first have that conversation with yourself. Like just get in tune with yourself and understand that kind of that leads you to sexual liberation no matter what. Like no matter what door you go down next,
mm,
it's going to be okay. You're backing yourself. And
yeah.
and that also then takes a lot of the weight off of sex, off of how we're trying to, what we're trying to do, what the whole expectation, how our body's supposed to be responding. And I think that's a really good kind of way to to almost wrap up to like this whole conversation is
Mm.
that is a great first step for people to think about.
Yeah, yeah. As you're talking about that space of when you're existing in tolerating and enduring quite often, saying no to a lot of people, it can feel really empowering to start saying no to things and oftentimes until people really know where that no lives and exists, and it's respected by their partner or partners, that they really aren't able to give a true and authentic yes because there's not a felt sense of I can say no at any time to anything and it's going to be okay, it's going to be respected, it's going to be honored and listened to. But I think in that practice of saying no to things is once again then allowing for there to be a space where you are absolutely allowed to say no to anything even if your genitals are doing something else, right? So even if you're wet or hard, you can still say no to anything. And maybe there's a good practice there at even just, you know, starting to attune to like, okay, what are the things that I want to say no to and practicing like my genitals are turned on, but I am saying no intentionally and purposefully because I'm trying to get into a space of honoring the
Yeah,
whole of my subjective desire and not just like, oh, well, because I'm aroused in this way, physically aroused in this way, it means I have to say yes because physiological arousal is not consent and it is not an automatic yes.
correct. 100%. And I think that is absolutely fantastic for people to think about is,
Mm,
yeah, honoring their no and honoring their yes. I think you make a really good point is how can you honor your yes if you're not knowing where the no is coming from?
yeah.
I know
Just because someone is wet or hard does not mean yes.
that because that's one of my passionate topics is that it's okay to hurt your partner's feelings.
Mm,
I think that's something I bring a lot into the therapy room, especially working with couples, is because we can't say no because we're going back to I'm afraid that there's like consequence or worse is I'm a people pleaser and I don't want you to get your feelings hurt. So therefore I'm not going to honor my no. And I look
yeah.
at, well, how can we take ownership of ourself and also be true to ourself? And sometimes the other person will be disappointed, but what does that actually mean in a relationship? Like,
Mhm.
you're probably going to disappoint your partner at one stage of the relationship. Like, you didn't pick them up on time. They wanted pizza, you wanted sushi, and you gave in. We're
Yeah.
going to disappoint somebody. And so, sexually, that's going to happen. They're going to want it, you're not going to. You're going to want it, they're not going to. Like, how can
Mhm.
you always agree on the yeses and the nos, I guess, is what I'm getting to. And having that ability in the relationship to to understand, to respect, I think is the key word there, is respect that I will hear a no, and that's okay because
Yeah.
I can also say no, and in turn, that just makes our relationship and our sex life even better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that so many people hang on to this idea that um there should be a 100% alignment and congruence of when one partner wants to have sex, the other partner wants to have sex and is in the mood, and they're always in alignment. And I feel like it is more common and more normal that there's going to be variation in that, that inevitably someone is not going to want sex at the same time that someone does. And that is absolutely normal. And, as you're saying, can we enter a space of disappointment and repair, or be able to offer alternatives, which I think is a huge thing for people, to be able to offer alternatives, to hear a bid for sex, and as the person hearing the bid, be able to say no and potentially offer alternatives. Really not into that right now. Could we just cuddle for a bit? How about we just make out for a little bit? Are you up for that? Offering some sort of alternative, checking in with yourself first to say, like, what do I have bandwidth for? That might even be like, I'm so fried. Can we just sit on the couch next to each other? And I want to put my feet in your lap. And can we do this thing?
I
And
like what
as
you
the
said earlier. Sorry to interrupt, but what you
oh
said
yeah,
earlier was fantastic. It was, "Hey, I love you. I find you attractive, and I just can't tonight." That's also, I think,
mm,
so much gold. I wish people could take that on board because,
yeah,
I mean, absolutely, we could sit on the couch or we can make out, but sometimes people don't even wanna do that. But if you're
yeah.
giving your partner, "I love you. I think you're amazing. You're attractive. You're so hot. I can't do it right now."
I'm so exhausted. I just need to stare at the wall for, like being able to say that. I think though, with that though, is that if you are the partner who is making that bid for sex, you're trying to initiate, you're trying to spice things up, and your partner says to you like, "Oh, I love you. I think you're so hot, but not tonight. I'm not into it." Is that the partner that's being turned down? It has to also be like, "Oh yeah, no big deal," or "I'd love to do that with you." Thanks, thanks
100%.
for putting that on the table, and being able to approach things in a way that is not fine. I
You
guess
never
that'll
want it.
do. Because then what's going to happen is the person who's saying no isn't going to want to offer alternatives, because every alternative is, shut down. Is like, oh, that's not good enough. Oh, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
And if we are able to think about, okay, what is it that we want when we're thinking about, I want to have sex with my partner? Is it connection? Is it shared mutual pleasure? Do I want to feel wanted by my partner? Do I feel free for a moment in time where I like don't have to think about work or this or that or the other thing? Are there alternatives to some of those things that don't require sex, or more specifically penetration? For a lot of people, it's like, "Ugh, I don't want to do the whole thing."
Yeah, yeah.
Um whatever that means. But in offering some of those alternatives, what a person is then hearing is, oh, like what I have to offer isn't enough in terms of connection, or isn't pleasurable for you. And so I think it's this give and take in that realm of communication, where being brave enough to say no and offer alternatives, and also attuning to your partner and being brave enough to say, oh, yeah, I'm kind of bummed by that. But you know what? That also sounds like a great idea. I'd love to do that with you. And starting to create a relationship where if sex doesn't happen, we can do so many other things where we feel connected, where we feel desired and wanted by our partner, that we aren't putting it solely on sex, because life happens, stress happens, disability happens, aging happens, things happen that change how often we're wanting sex, what types of sex we're wanting to have, what types of sex we're able to have. And these conversations, being able to offer alternatives, being able to find things that meet some of those needs without relying solely on sex needs to look this specific way in order for it to count. Or once again, circling back to an orgasm needs to happen in order for it to count. I don't know. I would challenge people to have sex and don't orgasm. Make that a challenge and
Ooh,
focus on everything but orgasm. Like what could that experience be like if there's no pressure on anyone to have to orgasm, where it is just that exploration of, okay, what happens if I touch you here? Do you like this? Hey, can you move to the left a little bit? And being able to have that communication where it's okay if you don't have all of the right answers or you don't know the exact mechanism to make your partner come. That's okay. They can tell you.
exactly, and if they don't know, they might learn or they're going to guide.
Mm,
They're gonna tell you what they're not liking, and you might find some new places that you do like. So, there's no pressure either way.
yeah. Yeah. Can you just have fun?
Can we just have fun?
Can we
Can
just have fun? That's oftentimes I'm like, can we just have fun? And can we give ourselves the permission for it to be a bit awkward sometimes? Where, bodies do weird stuff. And if we're trying to prevent weird stuff from happening, we're also probably not super present and engaged in the experience. If I'm so worried about, oh, if I move just wrong, I'm going to fart, or, oh, if this thing happens, it's going to get too slippery, or whatever, so many things where people get so self conscious and then they're
Right.
taken out of it. And once again, then so much of this head stuff is happening, and none of the rest of those bits and pieces are attuned to what's, where we're at in any given moment.
I think that's a fantastic point, and I would absolutely agree that what I see presenting a lot is people taking sex very seriously, and that there's no room for error. There's no room for the weird. Um, I don't know about
Yeah.
anybody else out there, but I'm pretty sure I laugh hysterically almost during every single sexual giggling off the charts, and especially if this is in a club or, one of those type environments, I'm pretty sure everybody can hear me laughing a mile away, and
Yeah.
because it's fun, it's like, "This is hilarious. Here's something let's do some Cirque du Soleil, acts at the moment, like, why not?" And it's funny. It's funny, it's fun, it's,
Mhm.
takes the heaviness and it's also, I think another way of looking at it is life is just so heavy anyway. Like like, I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but, like, everybody's busy, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of crazy shit going on in the world, a lot of awful things. Why do we need to bring that into the bedroom? Can't we just experience life as a human and not forget that we're here to enjoy life, that we are here
Yeah.
to have fun, and if we want sex to be pleasurable, then fuck, can we just not bring in the heaviness? Because there's a lot of horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That is once again the important, what I see as important in not relying on sex to be all of your connection need, all of feeling wanted. Everything relational comes to rest on sex, because then it does create this seriousness to it, and it loses the ability to exist in a space of play where we can touch in all sorts of different ways that don't look like a traditional script around sex. And like, hey, how fun was that? That was really wonderful. I had a couple that I was working with once, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we've been really sexually disconnected and all of this stuff." And like, but we found something that was really fun that we did, and it wasn't sexual, but it was kind of." And I was like, tell me more. And they told me about an experience that they had where they were like just kind of like playing around, and then they were wrestling each other, like, rolling around in the living room. And they were like, that was the most fun we've had in so long. And they were so connected. They were like touching each other, like
Ooh.
making flirty eyes at each other. And I was like, wrestling? Who knew? But it was playful and fun for them, like dancing in the kitchen with your partner, doing some sort of fun thing to say, like, oh, we can touch each other in a bunch of different ways. And it doesn't just have to look like, you know, we kiss for 2 minutes and then, someone rubs something on something else and then we stick a bit in another bit, like that is a very mechanical, scripted way of doing things.
I think I've had lots of clients talk about wrestling too. It must be a thing. Hey, that's a tip out there. Wrestle your partner with obviously, be safe, have fun.
Yeah. Steer
But
clear of like corners, probably.
um, Haley, tell everybody who's listening where they can find you if they'd like to work with you.
Oh, great question. My website, probably, which
Yep.
is luxsextherapy.com.
Awesome.
That's me.
Well, go check out Haley. And if you want to work with Haley, especially if you got some wrestling to talk about.
We've got some wrestling to talk about. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
I'm currently making a workbook, so hopefully at some point that will be on my website and people can take it, and some of these things that we've talked about will be in there and give people a little bit of a primer before coming into therapy where they're like, "Okay, so we did this thing and that went terribly. Help." And I can say, "Great.
here
We
we
have a place to start."
Fantastic. And I didn't mention that Haley is located in Launceston, Tasmania. So just in case you're looking for sessions, I'm going to have to do
Mm.
Zoom. You are anywhere else but Launceston. I hope everybody who's listening out there is having a happy, thriving sex life because you deserve it. And in line with today's episode, enjoy life and have some fun in the bedroom because you know what? I think that's where the joy and pleasure you might find. So thank you for tuning in tonight. Thanks, Haley.
Thank you, Laura.